Hey, Greg.
Hi, Daniel.
You didn't get what you wanted for Christmas and Hanukkah, did you?
I didn't.
You didn't get 8 calendars for Hanukkah.
I didn't.
Well, guess what?
What?
I'm not apologizing that I didn't get them for you. But for everyone else listening, if you also didn't get what you wanted for the holidays because your family, I don't know, hates you, what you really wanted, obviously, was the LA Meekly 2025 Lived and Died in LA monthly wall calendar. But now you can buy it for yourself. Now we're allowing that now. So we still have some left. So you can now buy it for yourself, not just the gift anymore. For $35 shipping included, you can get this wall calendar for yourself because you're so disappointed you didn't get it.
No more relying on other people. You can go out there and you can buy a calendar with your own bootstraps. But please, we take money too.
We take $35 or 7,000 bootstraps is what we'll accept. Yeah, for 2025, how about you satisfy yourself every once in a while?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Huh.
I gotta go see Baby Girl. Sorry, I gotta go. I forgot that I bought tickets for Baby Girl. I gotta go.
I gotta watch what I assume happens in Nosferatu. I have to leave right now. So again, you can buy our 2025 monthly LA Meekly Lived and Died in LA wall calendar. $35 shipping included. You could message us, la.meekly@gmail.com, or on Instagram at la_meekly, or on the website, lameeklypodcast.com. You can send us a message there to order it. So that's $35 shipping included. You can still get it. The year has just begun.
January 1st, 2025. You don't even know who died on this day and where.
Guess what? It might have been you. we do take ghost dollars and bootstraps and actual money. So buy that calendar. And now here comes the first episode of 2025. Yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby. This is our voices now, baby.
Yeah, seeing Baby Girl. So we start the year off, Greg is looking at his phone. Mm-hmm. No intro of an episode is more important than our January 1st intro to an episode. And Greg, you're looking at your phone and you have butterfingers?
It's just that I want to make sure it's 2025 because sometimes it feels like 2015.
I'm quite sure, not to pull back the curtain on your psyche too much, but you often get dates confused.
Yes, I do.
I'm quite sure you have gotten the year wrong before on me.
Mm-hmm. And not even like, there's a 3 weeks into a new year where like, I put 2024 again. Oh no, isn't that crazy? I put like 2016 when it was clearly 2021. Yes. I got the year wrong before. And what's the big deal? Since we've been through a pandemic, I often don't know what.
Yeah, and that pandemic, Y2K. It's been going on for 25 years now.
The Spanish flu.
Y2K25.
Yeah, I'm very bad with days. Some would say that
Well, I've got a product for you. What if everything is just one ad for a calendar after another?
Well, that's a really awful thing that happened in June of 1983 to the people of Los Angeles. But if they had a calendar, they would probably...
Everyone would have been okay.
Yeah, it would have fixed every situation.
So let me be the first to say Happy New Year to
Happy
all of you.
New
This
Year,
comes out at the
Meeklings.
stroke of midnight. You still have slobber from your loved one all over your lips.
Yeah.
Your champagne glass is still slightly full, and
bubbly.
You did make everyone stop kissing and sit down. Turn off the Ryan Seacrest. We're listening to LA Meekly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and everyone was... They were okay with it.
They were okay with it only because it was Ryan Seacrest.
Yeah.
If it was anybody else, if it was, God forbid, Andy Cohen, they would not stand for this. We can't hold a candle to Andy Cohen.
No, never. Andy Cohen?
The police said we can't. We've tried. We tried storming his castle up on the hill.
Yeah.
Because of that monster he was creating, which is Anderson Cooper. So this is the LA History Podcast of Los Angeles. That means LA. That's what LA stands for.
You thought it was
the Louisiana Podcast. Mm-hmm. Love that history from Los Angeles. This is Daniel Zaffron, the host on the coast.
This is Greg Gonzalez, the coast with a host.
Yeah, that parasite you got on December 31st. In your brain.
In my brain. Don't listen to RFK Jr. I know he's a Kennedy, but...
It's not that bad to have a brain worm.
I thought it sounded pretty cool. I thought I'd get discounts at Staples. I don't.
You just have discounted Staples in your head. So this is a Los Angeles history podcast, like I said, where we talk about the history of Los Angeles. But before we do that, let's talk about something we did of interest or note in the month of December.
Something that I've never
Did you
done
get a calendar?
before.
Again, I'm just making everything an ad for calendars. Every second. And you know what the most devastating part of the riots were? That they didn't know what day it was.
They actually thought it was 2 weeks later than it was because the upheaval just confused everybody, and nobody had checked their Walkman at the
Their Walkman.
Their Walkman. You could check a Walkman.
Their
for
iWalk.
Yeah.
So, Greg, what did you do in December?
I not only went to the Vista to watch some fine films, I, for the first time, went to the Pam Grier-themed coffee shop that is attached to the Vista called Pam's Coffee, owned by Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, of course.
Of course it is.
You can't give it to Pam Grier, the maybe still alive Pam Grier.
Yeah, she's still alive. And and I asked them if she had come by, and she had taken lots of photos, which is really cool.
Did she get free coffee?
I hope so.
Yeah, that would suck.
That would suck if your picture's all over it and you're like, okay, that'll be $3.25. What?
That would suck like a pair of feet to Quentin Tarantino.
It's where all the bear claws are in the shape of feet. It's kind of gross.
But it's BARE. Claws is what he calls feet. Yet when you scribbled and mumbled to yourself some sort of manifesto before we recorded.
Loaded a gun in front of me. I thought it was a prop. I thought you did that Abraham Lincoln play.
But you said something about, Pam's coffee. I was thinking Pam Grier has a coffee shop. Guess what? She does.
She does.
Interesting.
Yeah. She has it themed after her.
Is it good coffee?
It's very good coffee. They have
What's the theme? Like what is...
The theme is we like movies, but...
okay. So it's just movie theme, not necessarily just Pam Grier.
Not necessarily Pam Grier, but there's a lot of Pam Grier. You'll get a lot of Pam Grier for your buck. She's kind of like stapled in everything. She's on all the mugs. She's on, she's the ornament of that place.
Do they call the creamer Greamer?
I don't get creamer, so I don't know. But they have very tasty pastries. They have a breakfast sandwich that my friend said was good. And and it's a cool coffee shop, and it's a nice place.
It's a Pam and cheese.
It's.
But what is Quentin Tarantino's obsession with Pam Grier? I get it. She's cool. And
she's cool. Good. He put her in Jackie Brown, but I think that she was just like a staple of blaxploitation movies in the 70s, which he was a big fan of. And she's just a powerful female in films.
But why name a coffee shop after her?
Because there was
now of all times.
Well, he could do whatever he wants. He can get away with it. He can take the New Beverly and make the schedule crap. She was in a film called Coffee, which is sort of like with COFFY, which is how they spell it at the thing.
There's a lot of puns.
There's a lot of puns.
If they do not, listeners, please send in if they do or do not have a Pam and cheese sandwich in the coffee shop, the Kafifi shop, or however they spelled it.
The hash browns should be called Foxy Browns. And that's, There's another one that's escaping me right now. Friday Forster. Is that another one? Oh, it doesn't matter. Yeah, I went to Pam's Coffee. It was good. Everyone should try it. It's in Los Feliz. It's right next to the Vista Theater, which you should also go to. The Vista is one of the most beautiful theaters we have in town.
I've never been to the Vista even since Quentin Tarantino has.
You've never been to the Vista?
Put his feet all over it.
You would love it.
No.
There's so much leg room.
Oh, really?
I
hate leg room. I get comfortable by putting my knees up against the chair in front of me, and then I wiggle a lot during the movie when I get excited. When I watch Baby Girl.
Yeah, when I watch Baby Girl, I want everyone around me to know that I'm reacting to it. Me and my friends from high school, we went to go see, one of my favorite memories is we went to go see Kill Bill on opening night there, which again, before he owned it.
The foreshadowing,
I know. And then I don't remember if it was oversold or we just we sat in the front row because we got in line late. And we sat on the floor of the front row and watched it. I don't remember why we sat on the floor. I don't remember if it was oversold or if we just like...
Are you sure you weren't at the Bob Baker Theater?
Oh, it might have been in the Magic Circle. Yeah, that was one of my best movie theater memories, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That sounds awful to watch it. Because even like at a reasonable distance, watching a movie on the floor is terrible. Because you have to keep shifting and your bones hurt.
Your big bottom?
My big bottom bone hurts. But yeah, no, that sounds terrible. That's worse than me seeing Spider-Man 3 in the second row of the IMAX screen at City
That's
Walk.
pretty dumb.
It wasn't my choice. It was Venom. Venom made me do it.
Topher Grace Venom made me do it.
And that's my new bumper sticker. Venom made me do it. You want to hear what I did in the past month?
Yes.
I went to, who's the guy from, Dolomite? What's the guy's name from Dolomite?
Dolomite? His name is Dolomite.
What's the actor's name from Dolomite?
I don't know.
Well, I went to Dolomite's
tea house.
I went to Dolomite's tea house.
Yeah.
It's owned by Wes Anderson. You wouldn't understand. What my thing of the month is a bookstore on Sherman Way in Canoga Park called Next Chapter Book. books.
I like bookstores. You know that about
It's
me.
a used bookstore.
I love used bookstores.
No,
Yeah.
only the finest new things for you. Yeah, I had a gift certificate that was given to me 4 years prior that was half eaten by my cat, and the guy still accepted it.
Wow,
But
desperate.
They had to get no money.
Yeah.
He not taking it would have been better for
Yeah.
him. It's a really good bookstore. They have a lot of old paperbacks of just like good and junky stuff. I went for the junky stuff. But then they have like some historical books that are pretty expensive, and then a lot of nice things. It's owned by an old guy, and he won't mind me saying that.
Yeah, he actually likes it.
Father Methuselah over there. It's this old guy. He's a veteran of, I was guessing, the Korean War, and Melissa said that's insane. And she looked it up. He's a veteran of the Vietnam War.
Okay.
Yeah, he runs the place. He's really nice. He has the most relaxing voice you have ever heard in your life. Just go for the voice. Don't even get the books. But yeah, he was very helpful. We were buying our books, and then we saw a book on the counter that we also wanted that had just been donated. So he took the time to research how much this book was worth to give us a good price on it. And then also put one of the dust jacket things on the cover
so
just to make it look nicer for us. And then he gave me a free pen and a flashlight.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I did tie him up in the back and empty the register. So but
he was super cooperative.
Yeah. Better get there quick.
Yeah.
Because he does not have much time.
I did not leave him a lot of food. I threw a piece of bread near him.
Yeah, he had some free Tootsie Rolls I threw back to him, which I took the rest. But yeah, but that whole area of Sherman Way, we've been there together. There's like a lot of...
Is it like, what's it called? Like Antique Row or something?
Yeah, maybe something
like
Antiques
that.
Roadshow, yeah.
Yeah, that's what
Little
it is.
Antiques Roadshow. Yeah, they have like a really cool stretch of antique shops. There's a cool diner there that's called, I think, Henry's. And then there's the Madrid Theater that's like under construction right now.
Right.
It's one of those stretches of Sherman Way that... Like Sherman Way has a few of them, and so does Van Nuys Boulevard, where like this is cool and it could be improved.
Yeah.
Like this is one of those areas that could be very cool. Speaking of cool, there's a mural of Fonzie over there. Sherman which I posed in front of from our hit viral video about the Valley, which is currently, as we speak, making the rounds again, thanks to my Valley Pass. We can sign autographs later, but yeah, it's a really cool area, and that bookstore is really nice. Very affordable
bookstores. All I ever ask for any bookstore that's used. When I first moved to the Valley 100 years ago, that was the only part of the Valley I liked because there was an Aardvarks there. There was that diner. There was like a Goodwill maybe and an antique store. Like I liked that stretch of the Valley.
The antique stores, like they're really cool. Like the antique stores, you will not get those bookstore prices. They're really expensive, but they have really cool things there. And if you're willing to shell out
50 grand,
$600,000 to buy the place, then maybe
you can get the books cheap.
You could get the
if you own the place.
You could run the guy to business. No, it's a fun little area. I think that's a good stretch to spend. Follow Your Heart is over there, which is the vegetarian
What's the Italian market we went to?
Cavaretti's or something.
Okay.
I couldn't remember. Something Giuseppe's or something. Yeah, no, it's a fun area, and I recommend spending an afternoon there.
Yeah.
Not during the summer, because it is quite hot in Canoga Park during the summer.
I mean, the bowl. You're in the bowl.
You're in the bowl now, baby.
You're in the bowl now, baby. Anything in the Valley.
Now we are in the bowl of the episode right now, because now let's explain what this episode is.
Oh yes, we haven't explained that yet.
You guys follow politics? Stop me if you see this in the news. This is a guy, Donald Trump. The guy from The Apprentice, I hear, is in the news.
The real estate guy from the 80s that we all agree we hated in the 80s.
You know, the slumlord.
Yeah.
The guy from Home Alone 2. You might
He's
know
in
him from
Home Alone 2. He's a scumbag. He's living trash. He's trash with a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And a toupee.
And somehow we're supposed to think not Tim Roth. Who's the guy from
Tim Curry.
Tim Curry. I'm supposed to think Tim Roth is Tim Curry. We're supposed to think Tim Curry is the bad guy in that movie.
He's not.
But he's just doing his job.
Yeah.
And I caught him smooching with his brother. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a lot of rhetoric going on right now, and a lot of threats being made against, I don't know, the fabric of America.
Yeah, the thing that made us special in the first place, even though it was kind of a lie. The promise of it was a nice lie. It was a nice lie. The promise of it was really alluring to everybody.
But with all of the threats against immigrants and diversity that are going on right now. I thought it'd be a nice thing to highlight some of the diversity of Los Angeles with some of the ethnic enclaves, I guess you could call them, the little neighborhoods of different cultures that are around Los Angeles. So we are highlighting 3 of them right now. Right now. So I guess we'll start with mine.
Yeah, please.
Let's go with mine. Oh, okay. So this segment's called Big Assimilation in Little Ethiopia.
You don't have to title them anything.
What do you mean?
What are you saying?
Greg,
what are you implying?
Greg, it's 2025. Everything has a title.
Titled.
This is the Doge segment.
This sentence has a title.
I'm going to crack down on the efficiency of L.A. Meekly in the year 2025. So, yeah, I'm talking about Little Ethiopia, which we both have a lot of experience. Your brother used to live there,
My
right?
brother used to live there, and we
famously, your brother is Ethiopian.
Ethiopian, yeah. Yeah, he used to live in Little Ethiopia right off of Fairfax near the Shakey's. He does not live there anymore, and I miss that.
It's Ethiopian Shakey's, though. It's a little bit different.
Yes, yeah. But we tried Ethiopian food one time, or once or twice.
One time, really? I hazard to say, and I think I bring it up many times in this, I think one of the restaurants that actually is a huge part of this story is maybe my favorite restaurant in Los Angeles.
Wow, really?
I really like Ethiopian food. I really just like, it's a small little area, but I really like just walking around there and going to the different stores. It's one of my favorite parts of town. I love Little Ethiopia.
Yeah, I love that little stretch there. It's really cool.
Are you calling me Little Stretch?
Yeah, little stretch. I mean, so you can't stretch. It's kind of funny. It's like an oxymoron.
It's kind of funny how you're mostly scar tissue. So, like I said, one of my favorite parts of town with one of my favorite restaurants in town, which I was thrilled to learn is actually the most important restaurant in Little Ethiopia. So suck it, Meals by Gannett. So to start, what is an Ethiopia? Ethiopia is a very large country on the east coast of Africa with an ancient history going back thousands of years, but none of that's relevant to Los Angeles. Who cares?
Me sitting here crossing out all my research.
I know.
I talked about my place's country too much.
Only because this is relevant to our never-ending interest in Indiana Jones. There are those who believe the Lost Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia.
Wow, really?
There's people, maybe they believe it there, that they're like one of the lost tribes of Israel.
Oh, okay.
And like when they left wherever, they brought the Ark of the Covenant with them to Ethiopia. So it's also it's in the Shakey's now off Fairfax. That's how they cook the Mojo. That's how they cook the Mojo potatoes. So the part of their history that is relevant to Los Angeles begins in the more manageable year of 1930. This was the year when Emperor Haile Selassie, who is a man, took control of the country and ushered in over 40 years of relative peace and prosperity and education and as much democracy as a 40-year rule of an emperor will allow. In the early 70s, a lot of young Ethiopians began leaving the country to pursue higher education at American colleges. This was and continues to be true for a lot of African countries. African immigrants to the U.S. on average have a higher education level than groups from any other continent.
Okay.
One such young man of this group was, and again, I'm not pronouncing any of this right.
Yeah.
Shakey's? One such...
Fairfax?
Fart facts? What is this? Carfax? One such young man was Fakari Gebre Mariam, who came to LA to study at USC. But we'll get back to him. But something was brewing underneath all that democracy in Ethiopia. Communism.
Oh no, our old friend.
Our old friend. Lucille Ball's old friend, but the bad Soviet kind of communism.
Okay.
Emperor Selassie was backed by U.S. support, but over time, the Soviet Union started arming communist sympathizers in Ethiopia, and one who became a leader of this group was known as Mengistu Haile Mariam. Again, a lot of similar. I think Haile just means like king or emperor. Or that's the name he gave himself.
Yeah.
In 1974, Mengistu, again, no way I'm pronouncing that right, led a coup against Emperor Selassie and took control of the government and celebrated the victory on August 22nd, 1975 by strangling former Emperor Selassie to death in the basement of his palace. In a turn of events we'll probably never see in certain countries that just had a coup, and maybe our own someday, the various factions that took control and the factions who wanted control of Ethiopia erupted into a civil war in 1976 known as the Red Terror.
Oh, anything titled that's never just like, it was just like a hot day.
What about like the Lavender Terror?
Yeah, what about like a mob?
The Periwinkle Terror.
A mob skirmish. A mauve misunderstanding.
So people were arrested, they were tortured, they were executed, including many civilians. This was when Mengistu was crowned with the nickname the Butcher of Addis. Addis Ababa or Addis Ababa, I don't know, being the center of power in Ethiopia and also where kryptonite landed on Earth. The Green Terror to some people.
To some people.
Kryptonite.
The one guy in particular.
Well, yeah, there's some. I don't want to blow up his spot. Some people on this planet are allergic to kryptonite. Some people. Coming 2025. It's estimated that by the time the Red Terror ended in 1978, somewhere between 10,000 to 75,000 people were killed, but the exact number will never be known.
Yeah.
This situation is what led to the Ethiopian famine everyone knows about from Ethiopia in 1983 to 85, where over 1 million Ethiopians starved to death.
Jesus.
In a country that a decade earlier was a prosperous country, which is very frightening that it could flip that quickly.
Yeah.
Also during this time, thousands of Ethiopians fled their country. The U.S. didn't allow many refugees from Africa in the 70s until 1980. The Refugee Act opened things up a little more, but still that only allowed for 1,500 people a year from all of Africa to move into the United States. Between 1975 to 91, the U.S. took in 29,000 African refugees. Most of these were Ethiopians. Most of them went to Washington, D.C. The rest came to Los Angeles.
Wow.
But the first wave of these people were college students who were already here and stayed here when the Red Terror broke out. People like Fakari Gebremariam, who I mentioned before.
Yeah.
He came here for school and graduated from USC in 1976, but because the Red Terror was still raging, he was not able to safely go back home. Instead, he stayed in LA and started working as a real estate agent, which is where in the late 80s, he became aware of a West African restaurant called Roslyn's.
Roslyn's.
That's my place. It was on La Cienega and had been open since 1975, but the owner, who was a Liberian woman named Roslyn, was also a nurse at UCLA. She wanted to sell it and retire.
Okay.
So Fakere was the agent selling it, but the deal he had set up fell through, so he decided, why don't I just buy it?
Yeah.
He wasn't West African, but he was African. And the second wave of Ethiopian immigrants to LA to flee the famine and wars had grown the Ethiopian population of LA to the point where he thought maybe there's a market for an Ethiopian restaurant.
Sure. Okay.
So in 1988, the year I was born.
Oh.
Coincidence?
Oh.
I think not. Fakere, so this is my dad, by the way. Fakere Gebremariam.
Did I not mention that
Did
before?
I not mention I'm the emperor of Ethiopia? So 1988, Fakere, even though he had just bought this restaurant, decided to relocate it, seemingly to get a lower rent.
Okay.
But he kept the name and the decorations. So the place he chose to relocate it was 1044 South Fairfax in a part of town then known as Sofax.
South Fairfax. Got it. Sofax.
That's Sofax. As we know from our Boyle Heights episode, Fairfax was a big Jewish area, but by 1988, the majority of the population was aging out or dying, and their kids had moved to different, more spacious parts of the city, like the Valley.
Yes. The Valley.
The Valley.
The Valley.
Canoga Park. And this southern part of Fairfax especially was run down, but that meant one thing to Fakere: cheap rent.
Hell yeah.
So that was why he picked that spot, which seems to be the answer to the question of why here. Like that's always what we've wondered of like, why are all these people from Iran here?
Yeah.
And the answer always seems to be because it was cheap.
It was cheap.
It was cheap at the time.
One person set up shop. And
one person.
And then the familiarity of like, oh, I know those words.
Yeah, I know that guy. I think I know that guy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the Butcher of Addis.
Yeah.
I'll go move there.
What are you up to?
He runs an actual butcher shop now. Now I'm the butcher of Sofax. So it's 1988, and now Roslyn's, an Ethiopian-owned African food restaurant, is open on Fairfax. This was a rare thing in LA, so the restaurant started drawing in East Africans of all nationalities, craving the flavors and smells and aesthetic of home. And in this not huge restaurant, a community of expat East Africans started to grow, mostly Ethiopians. Fakere started inviting Ethiopian musicians to perform at the restaurant, further cementing it as the hub of Ethiopian/East African life in LA. But Fakere had bigger ambitions than just a restaurant people can come hang out in, and then white people come.
And are very confused, and the waiters need to explain what's happening.
And he keeps asking for more injera bread. They're like, we don't eat that much injera bread in one sitting.
Dude, you need to slow down with the injera bread. Like really, like we're worried about you.
It expands in your stomach, okay? Your white stomach. So he was inspired by the bigger Ethiopian population in Washington, D.C., and the entire neighborhood that they over there had built for themselves. He also lived in Koreatown here for a while and was inspired by how he saw it grow into the Korean community it is. So he decided to do that, but for Ethiopians in Los Angeles.
It's kind of crazy. I know, you know, but like Koreatown and Chinatown are such big examples of how to model. Like my research, people were like, well, let's just do what they did in Koreatown.
Yeah. Let's just be Korean. Can we just...
I have a crazy idea. Like they try to make their own town. They just remake Koreatown. I guess we're Korean now.
Convert to Koreanity. So to do that, there needed to be more Ethiopian businesses to surround his one business.
Yes.
First, he convinced Rahel Woldmitten to move her restaurant she had owned on La Brea since 1985 to an empty storefront directly across the street from his restaurant. So now Mesab, which is still there, became the second Ethiopian restaurant in Sofax.
Yeah.
Then he convinced someone else to open up a restaurant inside of a small grocery store he had opened up right next door to Rosalind. So then Mercato, which is also still there, became the third Ethiopian restaurant there. And Fakari didn't see this as competition. He saw it as community.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great way to think of it.
To have the confidence to not be competitive. Oh,
yeah. Oh, what's that like?
That's so nice. Oh, to be Ethiopian in the 80s. Then came salons, more grocery stores, a travel agency.
Nice.
Slowly, this stretch of Fairfax was becoming the place to be if you were Ethiopian. And also a little white boy.
A little white boy. Sneaky little white boy.
A sneaky little white boy who loves chewy bread. This is known as chain migration, where the first group of immigrants, or really in this case an individual in Fakere, picks an area at random because of cheap rent. Mm-hmm. Others congregate there who then invite others from back home to join them there, who then come immigrate themselves, who then invite others from back home to join them, and so on until you have what was then known as Little Addis, or less romantically, Ethiopian Restaurant Row.
Right.
Little Ethiopian Restaurant Row. And by 1992, there were over 35,000 Ethiopians living in LA, with this area being their spiritual hub. They got to that number after 1991 when Mengitsu's reign crumbled, which created yet another power vacuum in Ethiopia, prompting many more to flee the country. Mengitsu, by the way, still alive, hiding in Zimbabwe, even though he was found guilty of genocide.
Wow.
So he is awaiting harsh punishment if ever they can get their hands on him.
Jeez.
And like I said, Ethiopians had a big leg up over other immigrants in the U.S. because they were mostly college educated and many were taught English in Africa. And because of the political situation back home, many of them were political activists in exile. So they had a pretty good understanding of how government worked, which they could use to their advantage in Los Angeles. Because we're all corrupt. You could just take advantage of us.
As long as you know how bribes work, I think you got a pretty good idea of how to get well.
And that's why I always say Ethiopians are running our government. Little Ethiopians are running our government. That being said, they were still immigrants, and they were also black immigrants, which are not two easy things to be in the United States. In the 90s, only in the 90s.
It's better now, right, guys? Right? Please tell me it's got better.
Many of them faced hardships, and many people became homeless or sent to jail or even joined gangs. And assimilation was not easy in a new, mostly white world, nor was it easy in the African American communities they often lived in, because they had almost as little in common with them as they did with white people, and that caused a lot of tension. Not to mention the strife amongst other Ethiopian immigrants caused by ethnic and regional prejudices that they carried from the old country to here.
And then just like everyday problems on top of all that. And then just
like what? In the 90s? Like what? So to try to make things easier for themselves in a system that wasn't exactly working for them, they started implementing systems that had worked for them for hundreds of years in Ethiopia. One was called, again, now I'm never going to pronounce this right, ECUB, E-Q-U-B, E-Cube.
Okay.
Let's say E-Cube.
Sure.
Which is basically like a credit union that was originally done in the Ethiopian countryside, where local women would pool all the extra butter they had and would all take turns storing it in their homes, and everybody would add butter to this pool, which sounds disgusting. Or it's like the water from Arrakis. When you die, your butter goes into the communal pool. They extract the butter from your body. So you'd put some in, or you could borrow some if you needed it, as long as you paid it back. Then all the butter that wasn't used would be used for big festivals that would feed the entire village.
Wow. Okay.
So in LA, they substituted butter with money, which is way better for your cholesterol. So the new immigrants, we also accept butter for our calendars.
Yeah. If you bring us a vat of butter, we'll give you a calendar.
And don't try to pass off, I can't believe it's not butter.
I could believe, okay?
Yeah, I can't believe you're not getting a calendar. So the new immigrants who couldn't get loans when they first came here from a regular bank could borrow from the E-Cube to set up their lives and businesses and then become contributing members to the E-Cube for $200 to $300 a week you would have to put in so that others who came after you would have the same leg up.
That's a beautiful system.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
That will never be implemented on a larger scale in this country.
Never.
Now all butter goes towards Trump steaks. That's the new policy. The loans had to be repaid in full, but there was zero interest on these loans that you would take. And people would have to dip back into it through the years for medical emergencies or a new car or something like that, or just like a really cool, like a new skateboard you really wanted.
Like trucks, like red trucks.
Yeah. So they also had a separate Itty fund to help people pay for funerals. They would also have meetings of community leaders at Roslyn's to make plans to shape the future of Ethiopians in LA. And they had the Ethiopian American Advocacy Group to get more Ethiopians involved politically to ensure their seat at the table in the city of Los Angeles. And then the riots hit. 1992. 11 Ethiopian businesses and 2 refugee centers were either damaged or destroyed, which threw a huge wrench in the plans of the neighborhood. Progress there died down for a little bit, but thanks to things like the E-Cube, the community was able to bounce back. And by 1994, there were 5 restaurants, a coffee place, that travel agency, and a silkscreen shop on Fairfax.
Cool.
The comeback was completed on November 24th, 2002, when, after lobbying by the owner of Mercato, the owners of Masab, and owner of that damn travel agency, the neighborhood on Fairfax between Olympic and Pico was officially designated by the LA City Council as Little Ethiopia. It is the smallest of the 18 official culturally designated neighborhoods of LA and the only one representing Africa. It is also the first neighborhood to be officially named after an African country in all of U.S. history. Today, there are over 100,000 Ethiopians living in LA, and they've still got the Little Ethiopia Business Association to keep Little Ethiopia Ethiopian, which they will not let me become a member of.
No matter how much of their bread I like.
I ate so much of their bread at the first meeting, they would not let me come back. And I kept saying, man, I feel like I'm going to throw up. And they said, yeah, you ate all the bread.
That's what the bucket's for.
There's the E-Cube, the E-Deer, and then the Injera bucket.
And you kept trying to convince them that the Olive Garden thing of the free breadsticks was like a policy in America. They're like, we've been here longer than you have.
I come as a representative from Little Italy, and we have bottomless breadsticks there.
A gesture to the Americans, and they're like, we're more American than you are.
You know, so there's 18 official culturally designated places in LA. Can't find that list anywhere. Yep. I emailed 2 different government departments to try to get an answer. And as usual, with every government department or really anybody I've emailed with questions like this for LA Meekly and the 12 years we've been doing this, never got a response.
Yeah. They're going to get back to us in like 2029. What?
What are you talking about?
What's this?
What's Los Angeles?
You guys didn't fall in the ocean yet?
What are you still doing here?
Yeah. Get out.
The city's over. So what do you have for me? Where are we going now? Let's stamp our passport, okay?
Okay.
I need to see your passport.
Yeah. Show me your papers.
Yeah. What are you smuggling today? What do you have? What is your business here? How much injera did you just eat?
They measured it in pounds. As I eat it, they weigh me. I'm here to talk about historic Filipinotown, or hi-fi as it's sometimes addressed. Kind of fun. It's really cool.
Well, is it spelled? Okay, so how do you spell Filipino? F-I or P-H-I? Is it hi-fi or hi-fi?
It's F-I-L.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
It's also, the other way is funnier, but hi-fi is cooler.
Yeah. Historic Filipinotown is nestled between West Lake MacArthur Park, Koreatown, Echo Park, and downtown, with the official street boundaries being bordered east by Glendale Boulevard, on the north by the 101 freeway, on the west by Hoover Street, and south by Beverly Boulevard.
Okay. I don't know if this is an area I have been conscious of being in Filipinotown.
When we went to Leo's Tacos, we were in, I think that's counts as historic Filipino.
So I've had Filipino food.
I've had Mexican food in Filipinotown. I think it's actually closer. I think Tommy's is actually in Filipinotown.
Oh, then I've had a ton of Filipino food.
I've eaten all of there. I've eaten the whole menu there. So that stretch there. I think Belmont High School is another one of those streets.
Philly dog.
Philly dogs. Thank you.
Yeah, Filipino chili dog.
Okay, so to explain how Filipinos settled in Los Angeles in the 1920s, we have to briefly discuss the history of the Philippines, which the name itself derives from King Philip II, King of Spain, during Spanish colonization of the islands in the 16th century.
That makes so much sense, and I never even occurred to me.
Me neither. And I was reading, like, oh no.
Good thing we in America didn't do something like that.
Just for the curious, Philippines itself is in Southeast Asia, north of Indonesia, east of Vietnam, south of Taiwan.
Bordered by Olympic
And temple, yeah.
A temple. That's in Papua New Guinea.
That isn't to say that their history starts with colonization, although the island in the Southeast Asia is fairly new in the grand history of civilizations, with people inhabiting the island only within the last 100,000 years.
Newcomers.
New
New
to the
money.
scene, yeah. The people there regularly traded with China and other Southeast Asian islands and shared writing forms with India and Indonesia. I was reading that like Buddhism passed through but never really stuck. Same thing with like Islamic beliefs kind of passed through but nothing really stuck. They had their own belief system, and then
This is a question I know you don't have the answer for.
Cool.
How did they get there? Because that's far away from like mainland.
They said it was originally a lot of travelers just sort of like ended up on the island, like people trying to get from other like different places just sort of settled there.
So they thought, wow, this is America.
Yeah, I'm going to wait till a boat passes and then just like a boat. But settlements started to develop and a class system formed. Spain takes over the island at the end of the 16th century and plants Christianity and a bunch of other Spanish things that the Americas also had instilled on them.
It's like Shogun all over again.
I don't know what that means.
Actually, I think they were Portuguese.
Probably. Yeah. That guy sounds like Tom Hardy so much it bugs me.
He sounds like Tom Hardy and he looks like Rick Grimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm so glad I got that off my chest.
I've been waiting to say that for years now, even though the show came out like 3 months ago. So the first Filipinos who landed on the West Coast docked in Muro Bay in 1587 as part of a Spanish expedition on the Nuestra Senora de la Esperanza, or Our Lady of Hope.
Mm-hmm.
Aboard the ship was a Spanish Jesuit priest, a Portuguese Franciscan priest, some soldiers, and a group of Filipinos.
Okay, Greg, put down your fan fiction script for Shogun, all right?
And then the guy had a really big sword, and then Shogun. They'd Shogun stuff.
And then the guy who I think was in Inception was there?
Yeah, there's a lot of pretty ladies. So there were some soldiers.
This is also your fan fiction script for Baby Girl.
These are my pages dripping in milk. Also on the ship was some soldiers and a group of Filipinos being referred to as Indios Lucones, or Luzon Indians in English.
What's Luzon?
It's an island in the Philippines north of Manila.
Okay.
So they were just like, Spanish is like they're Indians of Luzon.
So that by Indians, they mean like people from India, right? Like how they called Native Americans
I
Indians?
believe so, yeah.
So they just thought anybody who
is this shade
you're
was
not
not
white,
from Spain.
You're not black. You're not Chinese. You're an Indian.
You know what's funny is, like I was going to say, they're going to check the chart. They literally had a color chart. They were so uncool. Let's just put that out there. So the Indios Lucones served as scouts for their mission and were the first to actually explore the territory before the explorers were just like, we're explorers. Go explore for us. Go be scouts. They would actually do the exploring. A scuffle between the two parties, the native people of Muro Bay, which I believe were Chumash, a scuffle between the two parties led to a full-on skirmish as the Spanish expedition left Muro Bay, resulting in 2 deaths, one of them being one of the Indio Lucones. So they
Make them fight.
The Philippines stayed under Spanish rule for a couple hundred more years, with the revolutions building in the late 19th century between Filipino activists and Spanish friars. The Spanish-American War was also swelling around this time, weakening Spain even further. Americans and Filipino activists took back Manila from the Spanish, and then America turned their back on the Filipino forces that helped make that possible, which is like, don't deal with America. At the turn of the century, Spain...
Let that be a lesson to you.
Yeah.
Shame on you for trusting us.
At the turn of the century, Spain sold the island of the Philippines to the United States, who would exploit the land and its people, of course, for cheap labor.
Well, okay.
Why?
Yeah, but like, so what was it? Like, it was like how Guam or Puerto Rico, like, was it a territory or was it just like a plant we owned? Like
it was like a territory.
Okay.
It was a territory we owned until they developed their own government, and I think we backed off. But everybody,
whoa. I didn't know you were bringing a government.
Hey, whoa!
Don't bring a government into a dictatorship fight.
The first modern influx of people coming over from the Philippines to Los Angeles happens in the early 20s. In 1924, there was a federal immigration law known as the Asian Exclusion Act. I'm trying to figure out what this means, which limited the number of Asian immigrants from settling in the U.S. This act also led directly to the creation of the Border Patrol. Cool.
Wasn't it? Because that comes up in my next one, or maybe something else, but I think it might have, or either that or the one I'm going to talk about, like completely forbade it. Like if you were Asian, you were not allowed.
I read both. I read that there was a quota, like they limited the number. I also read like the number was 1. Like the number was so small that it's like,
send us your best one.
Make them fight. So this law passed that had a direct effect on the number of agricultural workers, since many of them were from Japan. And because, go ahead.
I just like,
Why?
you know, I don't know. Like, I don't know why people can't see how stupid these sorts of policies are. Like, I don't understand. Like, I'm stupid. And when it comes to government, I'm really stupid.
Really stupid.
But like, it's so, you're taking your Yosemite Sam America guns and shooting both your feet when you do things like this. It's so crazy.
It's so crazy. It's very racist.
Okay. All right. Now I get it.
Okay.
It's more than just finance.
It always feels like, I mean, it's the same thing of like, these immigrants come to this country and they work agricultural jobs that should go towards Americans. Okay, we're going to kick out all the immigrants. We're going to pay you like $2 a day to do this. We're not going to do that. Okay, well, we need the immigrants then. So like, it feels like just a very white people policy. And because the Philippines was under a U.S. colony at the time, its citizens were U.S. nationals and could legally come to the United States since the Asian Inclusion Act did not apply to them.
Interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting.
That's why in the early 20s, there were an influx of Filipinos coming in. That's super cool that the U.S. nationals from the Philippines, they weren't discriminated against.
And
you idiot.
They had fully paid for houses when they got here also. We loved them so much.
So much.
It's weird because when you think about like Asian immigrants back then, it's usually just Chinese people and maybe Japanese people. So it's weird to think about they were also Filipino people.
Yep.
What were they doing? Where were they?
Where were they setting up shop? How good of a time were they having? The first wave of Filipinos were men who came to California to work and found places in Little Tokyo near Weller Court, which is that cute little mall with a bookstore.
Okay.
By the big statue. There's a Starbucks on the side. And Bunker Hill to stay. They stayed in those two places.
Interesting.
Bunker Hill, in particular, First Street near Grand and Hope, where the block where the Dorothy Chandler and Walt Disney would later go up. Like that area right there.
Well, they slept in the Walt Disney Hall?
They slept by that big pool. There's a house where that pool was. The agricultural workers needed to be served by the people of their community. So Filipino businesses like barbershops and restaurants and pool halls and dance halls opened up. And soon an area was becoming established that was known as Little Manila, which was, according to a dissertation by Joseph Bernardo, bordered by Temple, Hill, 3rd, and San Pedro, basically where that Weller Court now stands, Little Tokyo. Little Manila is no more, sadly, as new developments and the freeways built in the 1950s ate away at the community, and the Filipinos migrated west towards Temple and Beverly and into what is now Hi-Fi, historic Filipinotown.
It took a second to be like, well, why are we talking about stereos again?
Right.
Oh, you mean hi-fi with a PH. I understand.
Oh, I get it now. Greg, mono is stereo. Like most cultural enclaves in LA, it was formed out of discrimination and necessity, like we were talking about. Often the wealthy parts of the city push away, reroute, and create redlining situations, forcing lower income people of color into often overlooked areas, which maybe some people call them the slums. Maybe, sure, sometimes. They may be very concrete and urban, and a community manages to form there as immigrants to the country migrate towards familiarity, and then they settle. And from that, a new flower of culture blossoms.
That's beautiful.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
The area along Beverly and Temple had a huge population of Filipinos living there and working there, and it continued through the decades as influxes in immigration occurred, like the one in the 1950s, with people from the Philippines settling in Los Angeles, opening a business, raising children who would grow up to be first-generation Filipino-American. And then just like, through the decades, that continues. During the 70s, after things like the Chicano Moratorium of 1970 and the East LA walkouts of 1968, the Waltz Uprising of 65, and the forming of the UCLA student-run Asian American Pride publication Ghidra of 1969, which we talked about. Stuff like this, the community activism and cultural pride were on everyone's mind. Around this time, Filipino business owners, investors, and community members started to have the discussion of creating a Filipino district modeled after Koreatown and Little Tokyo and Chinatown.
It's crazy that it really, I mean, I guess it's all stemming from China, as I guess a lot of Asian culture does, but everyone's kind of looking at Chinatown of like, oh, that's what we want.
Yeah, we
want big dragons in the front. We want that.
Yeah, we want everything written in a language that we understand. And we also want a Starbucks too. And a nice one. Like the one on Broadway.
Not like that one in Chinatown.
And it's funny even thinking about, we covered the history of Chinatown before, and China City and the old Chinatown, new Chinatown, and China City, how it was this situation of like, they settled here. This was their area, gets knocked down, redeveloped. A white lady is like, what if we built like a little area for them? It burns down. And then Chinese people who are business owners are like, let us do it. You just hang back and just like, don't outlaw us, and we're going to do it right. And we have Chinatown now.
And that's the recipe. And that's how you make a Chinatown.
So creating a named district for the area would make living there a point of pride. Also, if the area had a name, you could point investors to it. You can create the historic Filipino art walk and food festival and say stuff like, "Did you try the coffee shop in Hi-Fi?" And it sounds like an actual
It's a
place.
Starbucks.
Yeah, it's a Starbucks. Yeah, it's an actual place in LA that people would want to go to.
I honestly, I knew that it existed. I didn't know that it had like arch, it had like a gateway and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It makes me want to go spend more time there rather than it's just like, you'll pass by, you might miss it. There's a bakery.
Yeah, I know. I feel bad for the ones I do pass. Like Thai Town, I'm always so interested in. Like, I never park around here though.
Oh, you can't.
You can't legally. You have to move there if you want to park.
You have to be Thai to be able to park there.
They'll give you a pass. When they say we gave you a pass, they meant a parking pass.
It's a parking visa that you need to get to visit Thai Town.
By the 1980s, when the immigration quotas were lifted, Filipinos became the largest Asian American group in the U.S. In LA County alone, there was a population of over 219,000 Filipinos residing through the very large county that we live in.
Wow.
At some point, and maybe still, we have the largest Filipino population outside of Manila.
I can see that.
So under the Bush administration, but not just, also like Orange County, also Burbank and Eagle Rock and further out.
You're
not
counting
just
Orange County?
Gross,
Greg.
I had to go there recently. I'm like, ugh.
Don't touch me, Orange County.
There's a nice Denny's.
Ooh, Starbucks. This must be historic Filipinotown.
So under the Bush administration in the early 2000s, a government program was established known as Preserve America Community, which allowed neighborhoods to apply for a designation to celebrate and protect their heritage in hopes of using historic assets for economic development and community revitalization, along with just good old neighborhood pride. In August of 2002, the city of Los Angeles officially designated the 2.1 square mile zone between Glendale, Hoover as historic Filipinotown.
This was 2001, you said?
2002.
That's the same year as the Little Ethiopia.
Yeah, I feel like that's when all these neighborhoods applied for this program.
Maybe it was a reaction to what happened in 2001.
Maybe. I could see that I could see that. I can also see Bush being like, okay, I need to prove that I'm not completely racist.
I don't hate all of
them.
Do I? Wait, no, it's Bill Clinton. I didn't have hateful relations. I don't hate every country outside America.
He's not Southern.
He's from Texas. Is he?
He sounds like Yosemite Sam. The city of Los Angeles has designated 7 sites in Hi-Fi as historic cultural monuments, which include the old Occidental Studios building, one of the oldest continually operated movie studios, where our girl, Mayor Mary Pickford, and D.W. Griffith worked when they were slumming.
She's Filipino?
You didn't know?
Wow.
We did a whole episode on her.
We neglected to mention that she's Filipino.
In Unidad Park off of Beverly, there's a mural titled, okay, here's where I struggle with pronunciation.
All right, now all the emails can be directed at you.
Yeah. Gintong Kasayan, Gintong Pan Ana, which translates to a glorious history, a golden legacy.
Wow, that was offensive.
It was so mean. I probably said everything wrong. Painted by Alicio Art Silva in 1995 and commissioned by Spark, it depicts Filipino American history and culture, which includes the awakening of the Filipino national and political consciousness. At Lake Street Park and Rec Center is the Filipino American World War II Veterans Memorial, which they say is the only Filipino American monument in America, or at least a war monument for them. The Filipino American Library at 135 North Parkview Street is there, and which is, by the way, the first and largest in the U.S., leads bus tours amongst the historic sites in Hi-Fi. The PWC Filipino with a P.
Okay.
I guess that might be a way that Filipino Workers Center in 2009 started giving tours of Filipinotown to showcase the neighborhood's historic cultural qualities as well.
Is there a difference between when it's PI, FI, or PHI?
I didn't look into that, but there probably is.
It's not for us to know.
It's not for us to know. And also, I forgot to look that up.
It's not for me to know.
I just noticed that there was a P when there was usually an F, and I thought, not my business. Every year, I think at the end of the summer, it's a historic Filipinotown festival, which includes like Filipino foods and like arts and crafts. They have a 5K run. I feel like I lost you a 5K run. In December is
really looking forward to that arts and crafts that I could eat.
Yeah, I'm going to eat all those cotton balls. In December is the historic Filipinotown Parole. Is it Parol Parole Festival and Parade, where participants learn about.
What is that?
I think it's a lantern that they make.
Oh, I don't know.
Filipino Parole Festival and Parade, where participants learn about Filipino culture and make the traditional paper mache lanterns.
Is that is this for Christmas time or? Because I know that there's giant things that they have for Christmas.
It might be, yeah.
Big.
They look like stars. They're big.
Yeah, they do kind of look. They're huge.
It must be the Parole, yeah. The There's plenty of Filipino.
Can I eat it?
I'm going to eat it. There's plenty of Filipino restaurants in the area. Two of the more famous are Bahay Kubo and Park's Finest. I've had Park's Finest before. I just don't remember it very well because I think I had been drinking.
Wow, that's racist.
But if anyone has any suggestions for good restaurants in historic Filipinotown, let me know, please. I want to try more of it after looking at menus all night last night.
And can I bring my injera bread with me from Little Ethiopia? Please let me bring my injera bread.
We're a melting pot. Please let me bring injera bread.
Please cook this for me.
Like most parts of LA between Hollywood and downtown, there's been a lot of unchecked gentrification, but even that...
Starbucks? No.
Starbucks is fine now, it turns out. Actually, the problem is hipster.
Yeah, Starbucks is the mom and pop.
Yeah, that's the mom and pop compared to the hipster coffee shop that'll knock out a family-owned business that's been there for 60 years and then close in a month because their prices are too high, and there's just like an empty storefront now. Even with the gentrification, the area has not lost its Filipino flair.
So it's still an area where a lot of Filipino people live.
I think a lot of people had to move out because a lot of the area is getting gentrified, but there's still a lot of Filipino people in the area.
Okay. How many?
What are their names?
Their names and addresses.
Yeah.
Because I know that Panorama City has a very big Filipino population.
Does it really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So I mean, really all over the valley, but I feel like especially Panorama City is.
That's strange because I thought you couldn't take the census in Panorama City because you would just like get shot. Like it was just like.
Wow. And those are the words of Greg Gonzalez, noted anti-Filipinist.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying Panorama City is scary.
A lot of people have thought they've been describing Greg as a philanthropist. No, he's an anti-Filipinist.
He hates piano.
So now let's get into our final little area
segment.
Of town.
Final neighborhood. The final neighborhood.
And this is maybe the biggest one.
It's very large.
Size-wise.
No one can get there because there's no parking.
Yeah,
but you can drive through.
Nobody knows how big it is. So how do you solve a problem like Korea? Oh, you've never seen The Sound of Music?
No.
I thought you would have enjoed that. But I also thought there's no way. Are you watching?
I'm going to be watching it soon.
Oh, yeah, we're all going to be watching it soon when the Nazis take over America.
We have to learn how to fight them.
With song!
Yeah.
How do you solve a problem like Greg? So, yeah, it's a song.
Thanks.
That would have gone over well.
You should have asked me before if I had seen it.
Yeah, I should start vetting these before. I'll tell you how you solve a problem like Korea. The story of Koreatown and Korean life in LA begins in the sleepy little Hanok town of Korea. Big Korea.
Big Korea.
In the late 1800s, again, we are stepping well outside the bounds of our jurisdiction.
As we have to.
As we must. As is our duty.
Yeah.
In the late 1800s, Korea and Japan fluctuated between being in a state of Cold War and hot wars with each other as a result of Japan's imperial ambitions in that part of the world until eventually, in the early 1900s, Japan formally occupied Korea. Again, This is Shogun.
This is Shogun.
Shogun was a prequel to Korea. This story.
Very scary.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Tom Hardy. So because of that, as is the common theme in this episode, people fled the country for safer havens in the early 1900s.
Sure.
Many Koreans left Korea during this time. One of them was a man named An Chang-ho, or as he commonly went by, Dosen.
Okay.
Dosen. He was a political activist. That was Shogun. That was Shogun's big line. Dosen. He was a political activist in Korea. So in 1902, he and his wife, Hae-ryeon Lee, fled the Japanese threat and moved to San Francisco. Supposedly, they were the first married Korean couple to ever come to the United States. But surprise, surprise, San Francisco turned out to not be much better towards Asian people.
You would think they would like them.
They would have,
but they didn't.
All of those old washed up gold miners didn't like Koreans.
But the homeless people read there. Don't you know? It's so much more cultured up there.
They all used to be in the Grateful Dead. Now they are Grateful Dead. I'm grateful they're dead. In 1904, they fled I'm talking about the minor 49ers,
Got it.
not the Koreans.
Yeah.
It's okay to say I'm glad white people are dead.
Especially minors.
Minors. Yeah. And let me be clear. ERS. So in 1904, they fled the anti-Asian racism of San Francisco to come to beautiful, tolerant Riverside. This was because there were a lot of jobs there in the citrus industry. So Dosen, and many other Korean and other immigrants went there to work as farmers in the citrus industry. Being the natural leader that he was, Dosun spread the word to other Koreans and got them jobs there as well, eventually building up a community known as Pachapa Camp, which was the U.S.'s first Korean enclave.
Okay.
Yeah. Good for Riverside.
They get everything they've ever wanted.
They have a
Riverside.
Cracker Barrel. They've got it all. But let's go to Los Angeles, okay, where we have nothing except Starbucks. In 1913, a really cold winter hit that destroyed the citrus business in Riverside. Thank God. So the Korean community scattered, but Dosun decided to move to beautiful, tolerant Bunker Hill.
Oh, yeah.
106 North Figueroa, to be precise, in a big old house he was living. So now, by this point in the world's history, Japan had fully annexed Korea and claimed it as part of the Japanese Empire. This happened in 1910. This was followed by a cultural genocide against Koreans waged by Japan. Korean historical documents were burned, historic buildings were demolished, only Japanese-approved history could be taught in Korean schools. You couldn't speak Korean in colleges. You were forced to worship Japanese deities. You had to change your name to a Japanese last name. Japanese settlers moved into Korea to bring plant life native to Japan to the land. Later on, as World War II approached and autonomy got melted down into bullets, Korean men were forced into manual labor in service of Japan. Korean women were forced into sexual service for Japan. And this didn't end until World War II ended. So this was going on for a long time.
What's that research lab where they tortured people? Unit 713?
Which one?
Yeah,
are you talking about Project MK Ultra? But way back in 1913, when Dosun moved to LA, so did many newly immigrated Koreans fleeing the iron thumb of Japan. Just the thumb was iron. It was more tasteful. Very Japanese. And Dosun, at this point, having established himself as the leader of the Korean independence movement, invited these people to move into the neighborhood around his house in Bunker Hill. Some 300 Koreans moved into Bunker Hill to be near him and take advantage of the help he was offering to new immigrants out of his house in finding housing of their own and jobs. He also founded a Korean Presbyterian church nearby, which was an equally big draw. So the Korean community grew and grew around Bunker Hill, and in 1938, Dosun moved the church to 1374 Jefferson and opened up right next door at 1386 Jefferson, the Korean National Association, which was an organization dedicated to helping the Korean community in Los Angeles.
Wow, okay.
So this move sort of shifted the Korean community from downtown to that West Adamsy part of downtown.
Okay. Yeah.
And you'll recall that West Adams used to be a wealthy black area for a while because of the racial housing covenants.
Yes.
Those covenants also applied to Korean people who were forbidden from moving into other parts of town, like just a few streets north of there in what we now know as Koreatown.
Yeah.
They were not legally allowed to move there because they were not white. They couldn't live anywhere north of Olympic, so they instead started moving east down Jefferson Boulevard. But starting in 1920, that's from The Sound of Music also.
Oh, okay.
Tom Petty's in it, you know. Did you know that?
Did you know that?
Did you know?
Did you know that most people think it's Julie Andrews, but it's actually Tom Petty?
That's Tom Petty as his character from King of the Hill. Did you know that? But starting in 1924, immigration from Asia into the U.S. was banned. So the population growth was kind of stalling out. So between that and where Korean people were allowed to live, their community's growth was stunted. But the roadblocks here started coming down a mere 24 years later in 1948 when Shelley versus Kramer, prequel to Kramer versus Kramer, outlawed restrictive housing covenants, which allowed them to spread into other parts of town. This, of course, combined with the new freeways being built in the area, and a little later, the Watts Uprising led to white flight, which left nearby parts of town not only with economic depression, but also with our long-lost friend, cheap rent.
Ah, cheap rent.
Then in the root of all immigration, cheap rent.
Cheap rent.
Then in 1952, limited immigration from Asia was finally reinstated, in addition to Korean women U.S. soldiers had married during the Korean War that they brought home, as well as children orphaned from the Korean War, as well as students. They all started coming to the United States. Then the final obstacle to come down was with the passing of the Immigration Act of 1965, which finally allowed for much greater immigration from Asia, and the Korean floodgates were officially open.
Let's get 'em, boys.
Let's get 'em.
That mean cheap rent.
That mean white flight, depressed areas of Los Angeles. Go get them. More Koreans seeking American opportunity came, as well as families of Koreans who had moved here long before but were never able to join them. Between 1965 to 75, the Korean population in LA increased by 481% to over 60,000 people. And one of these people was a man named Hae-Duck Lee, who had moved from Korea to LA in 1968. He was a businessman who had experience working in Germany and the US before, but similar to he envisioned something more for the Korean population of LA. Chinese people had their own neighborhoods around the world in countries that weren't Chinese, that had vibrant Chinese communities and businesses and restaurants and architecture. Everybody knew what a Chinatown was. Yeah. Lee wanted to show people what a Koreatown could look like.
Yeah.
To start, he needed a place that he knew would draw Korean people in just by the nature of necessity. So in 1971, he opened the Olympic Market at 3122 West Olympic. Here he sold all the products you'd need to make Korean food that wasn't being sold in Ralph's, which is our Korean market.
Yeah, that is actually...
To explain to you what Ralph's is?
My exposure to culture is 2 aisles of Ralph's.
It's the section between hot sauce and cheese at Ralph's. The melting pot, which is next, the one aisle over the sell melting pot.
Yeah, if you want to get a melting pot.
And to really announce itself as a Korean market, he had a sign out front in Korean. Mm-hmm. That was a big deal. This wasn't the first Korean market in LA, but it was the second one. Yeah. And it was considered to be the spiritual beginning of Koreatown as we know it, because what it did was it shifted Korean life in LA north from where it was before to the area that is now Koreatown because of this market.
Okay.
After this, Lee then bought 5 blocks of business fronts around Normandy and Olympic to rent them out to other Korean immigrants opening up Korean businesses, and also redesigned the buildings with Korean-inspired facades. This included what he called the VIP Plaza, which was a strip mall of Korean businesses that's still there, but most importantly, VIP Palace, aka Young Bin Kwan, which opened in 1975 at 3014 West Olympic. This was a restaurant / banquet hall / cultural gathering place and became the heart and soul of the emerging Koreatown. People ate there, they had wedding receptions, they had Korean drumming shows and other cultural performances. Even future president of Korea, Kim Dae-jung, went to a party at this place.
Wow, really?
And it was a Diddy party, Greg. It was a freak off.
No windows.
Windows, foam everywhere. And it even looked like it was straight out of Korea, like the design of the restaurant.
Yeah.
Lee imported the same blue tiles from Korea that are used on the Korean Blue House, which was their version of the White House until kind of recently. Now it's owned by the Blue Men Group. All this to make Korean people feel at home and to make sure that this area wasn't just a business district where people worked and shop, but rather a place where people lived.
Okay.
This was Lee's goal, and it worked. They also opened in 1975 the Korean Youth and Community Center to help new Korean immigrants find jobs and learn English. Lee had plans to build a third entry in his VIP trilogy with a 5-story VIP hotel at 3000 West Olympic. Now I was looking it up, like, wow, a 5-story hotel? That's like, there's a 5-story Starbucks, I think. Like 5 stories is nothing. But then the economy tanked, and not only did the project fall through, but he ended up going bankrupt and having to sell all of his businesses.
Damn it.
His biggest dream was to someday get gates in Koreatown like Chinatown has on Olympic. He wanted it on Olympic at both Western and Vermont, but it to this day has never happened. But it's interesting because he wanted it like how Chinatown looks Chinese. Mm-hmm. He wanted it to look like that, but Korean buildings, and that kind of fizzled out, sadly.
But like you kind of know when you're in Koreatown.
You know because of the signs, but not because like the architecture is like The Brutalist.
Yeah.
It's like the 4-hour The Brutalist, but it just looks like buildings that have Korean signs all over them.
Okay.
So you do know in a way, but it's not like, wow, look at those arches and
wow, the majesty of Korea.
The majesty of Korea. Look at that KFC, Korean fried chicken.
That sounds good.
That does sound really good. But it was officially recognized as a neighborhood in 1980 and got a little sign. But the financial troubles of the 80s gave way to an even bigger event in 1992 that has already come up in this episode. The riots. If you want a full account of that and the event I'm going to just briefly mention, you can listen to that sad ass episode that we did about that. But a brief recap, at the time, there was a lot of overlap of where the Korean and Black community of LA was mostly living in the Koreatown and South Central areas. So this meant a lot of Koreans going into Black-owned businesses, a lot of Black people going to Korean-owned businesses. That led to a lot of culture clash. Remember, a lot of the Korean business owners were from Korea, which is a pretty ethnically homogenous country, especially back then. So there were latent racial prejudices, whether or not they realized it.
Yes.
This led to a lot of tense or outright hostile interactions between the two communities, either in businesses or on the streets. The most famous, like you talked about in that episode, happened on March 16th, 1991 in the Empire Liquor Market when the Korean owner Soon Ja-do got into an argument with a 15-year-old Latasha Harlins, who was black, when Soon Ja-do accused Latasha of stealing a bottle of orange juice. The argument ended with Soon Ja-do shooting Latasha in the back of the head, killing her with the money to pay for the orange juice still in the little girl's hands. Horrific incident made even worse when Soon Ja-do was only given probation without time served for what happened. So relations between the black and Korean communities was not good. And when 1992 broke out, Koreatown got hit hard. There was a lot of anger and tension that people wanted to take out. Looting and destruction were rampant in Koreatown, and the one group in town who loves crushing looters, the LAPD, was nowhere to be found.
Hey, they weren't nowhere to be found.
Oh, they were in Santa Monica.
Yeah, you can go to their homes in Simi Valley.
Right, there were so many of them in Brentwood that day. So not for minutes, not for hours, not for days did the LAPD come in to try to disperse the crowds. They were too busy making sure nobody got into the rich white parts of town. So instead, the Korean people in Koreatown took it upon themselves to protect their businesses by staking out in or around or on top of them, armed with weapons to shoot anybody who came near. It was horrifying and sad, and it was a flat-out race war in the streets of Koreatown for a few days. And by the time it was all over, there was $350 million in damages to Korean-owned businesses. That was almost half of the total damage to the entire city was against Korean businesses. This was a wake-up call to the Korean community in LA that I'm really afraid a lot of people from a lot of groups have forgotten and are going to have to learn again the hard way, which was that it doesn't matter if you've made it, quote unquote, financially, or if you've worked hard and followed the rules like you were supposed to. If you're not white in America, then America does not care about you.
Yep.
That is the awful truth that still holds true. This was a huge setback to Koreatown, but the incredible part of this was that it didn't make the next generation jaded. It inspired them to work to make sure something like that never happened again.
Right.
Many of the younger generation vowed to repay the hard work their immigrant parents had done, not by assimilating and forgetting their roots in the hopes that they'd be safe next time, but by doubling down on their culture and making sure it's not only preserved for themselves, but understood by others. They put together groups that worked with groups of other ethnicities in town to come to cultural understandings. They made sure that they got Koreans involved in the local government so that their voices could be heard. And we're seeing the payoff of those efforts today. A lot of businesses closed permanently after the riots, but others did open, and a lot of money came in from Korea to help rebuild. So the community did bounce back, obviously, but without Lee guiding the vision of it, like I said, that Korean aesthetic he was hoping for never materialized.
Right.
And also a company called Jameson Properties, run by David Lee, bought a ton of the property around Koreatown after the riots while it was cheap, and is apparently the worst landlord in the city and is making it very hard for actual Korean families to survive there.
Awful.
It's all Starbucks now. Only Starbucks can live here. And that demographic has changed. Today, there's about 125,000 people living in the 2.7 square miles of Koreatown. And while 70% of the population are immigrants, only about 32% of those are Asian immigrants. The majority of people there now is Latino. Even the former VIP Palace restaurant is now Guelaguetza, which we talked about in the documentary thing, was in the Jonathan Gold thing, which is equally popular, but for a different community. The official boundaries are Vermont on the east, Western on the west, Third on the north, and Olympic on the south. But anybody who's been there knows that the Korean identity is still strong, because they have the Korean fried chicken place, KFC.
KFC.
It has the largest concentration of Korean businesses outside of Korea. They have the only natural hot spring in Los Angeles, which is inside one of their many spas. They have the most neon signs and valet parking of any neighborhood in Los Angeles. And the annual Los Angeles Korean Festival draws in over 350,000 people, which is great because Koreatown is already one of the most densely populated areas in the U.S. And not only are they one of the most park poor places in LA, they're also one of the most parking poor places in LA. So good luck doing anything in Koreatown. But we've talked about this before. One of the best parts in the city.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a place where you are and you actually feel like you're in a city.
Absolutely.
Like the buildings are old.
Yeah.
There's people out late at night eating at good restaurants. There's a ton of stuff going on. And just like a real big city, there's no parking.
There's many subway stops there, which is helpful. Lots of history there. And it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful part of town.
It really is. I wish it looked like Korea though.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, it's one of the most exciting parts of town, and I hope it can retain its identity,
Same.
which I know people are working very hard to wipe out.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the best parts of town, I would say.
I would agree
It's
with
no
you.
Little Ethiopia, but
It's not those 2 blocks of Little Ethiopia.
they don't have bread for me to eat. Yeah, it's not those two. It's not SoFax. Right? But yeah, those are just a few of our local ethnic communities.
And I hope we get to do more of these episodes because it was kind of fun looking into like, I never sat and looked at the borders of this little neighborhood that is real close to my house.
And it was also fun to learn like, what is the one business that drew everybody here? Who is the one person who opened this? And also like, as you know, it's preaching to the choir. Like I think the people who listen to us are not pro what the incoming president is threatening to do.
Yeah.
But to hear about what happened in Ethiopia, what it was like in the Philippines, and even today, I know there's some insane rulers in the Philippines.
Yeah.
What happened in Korea that forced so many people out, and is also going on in Korea right now. To say that those people who came here trying to escape that don't belong here is so evil. It is so disgusting and is so un-American. And to I don't know, it drives me. It's really scary to think that if he wants to take away birth citizenship, to threaten to do that, which is in the Constitution, is so frightening what the implications of that are.
Not only him saying that, and him now probably even having the political support to do that.
How can you do that?
The support of the people that we like
that we hang out with on a regular
basis.
We're in a biker gang with.
Just like the support or the ignorance of people who like don't even know that he's going to do that, or don't even know that he's willing to do that.
And to not see, okay, so here's one thing. Okay, so to not see that if you support that, you have fallen prey to a scapegoat.
Yep.
Whoever these people are saying that immigrants are the problem, while then spending $600 million on their wedding is the craziest thing I've ever heard. And you fell for it again. Yeah. But just like, if you can, I've been reading about the history of St. Louis, and the Dred Scott case that happened there, ruled that the Supreme Court ruled that people of African descent are not citizens of equal rights in the United States. The only reason that is not still enforced is because of the amendment that says if you're born here, you are a citizen. So if they go against that, then what are they going to start saying about other groups of people? And it's really scary. Yeah. It's really horrifying.
It's really horrifying. It's sickening. It's truly sickening. And you're right, totally un-American. Like, I'm not going to be like rah-rah America all the time, but the promise of America,
the promise and the ideal of America is what we support, not what America has actually done for many years.
For decades,
But I don't know, like a lot of people who listen to us are immigrants, want to be immigrants. My dad's an immigrant. 3 of my 4 grandparents are immigrants. Like it makes me sick. I hate it.
It's sickening. And that people are cool with it.
And you're an illegal immigrant, right?
And you're here on like a work visa.
You're here on an engineering visa.
Engineering this podcast.
Is your job.
Yeah, this is my job. Yeah, I had to tell a government agency in another country that this was my job.
To explain LA Weekly, I'm a podcast engineer.
Yeah, and that there are people on the street that that are totally into this. It's crazy.
There's people I work with who are totally into this.
Totally into this.
And there are people I work with who will also be affected in a negative way by this. And it makes me crazy and sad.
Yeah.
But this was just a few ways to celebrate what we do still have, and I hope we continue
to have it.
And now, before we get into our listener question,
sure.
A pre-listener question plug.
I'm just too sad to say anything.
I'm too sad. I drink because I'm sad.
sad.
Again, buy our calendar.
Yes. It's a very nice calendar.
It stops deportations if you buy our calendar.
It's a very nice calendar. Buy the calendar.
Buy the calendar, $35 shipping included. If you didn't get it for the holidays and you really want it, just send us a message. Instagram, anywhere, whatever. Find us. Shoot a smoke signal in the air. We'll find you.
Flare,
we will find you.
Greg is dedicated.
So we have our listener question from our old pal, Dan O'Keefe.
Hi, Dan.
I was waiting for you to say hi.
Hi, Dan.
It's so rude for you to not say hi. I won't say hi to him. So he asks, when K-Earth eventually narrows their playlist down to just one song, what will that song be? And we've lamented the downfall of K-Earth. It's a downfall. If they were still playing what they're playing now, which is like One Direction or whatever, but they still played Chuck Berry and stuff from the 50s, that would be the greatest station of all.
Yeah.
But as each decade passes, they chop one off on the other end, and it makes me sad.
Yeah, they should be moving further. We should be listening to
we should be listening to Beethoven at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
How come they don't play Irving Berlin on the radio on K-Earth anymore? That's what I was promised in Blade Runner. What do you think? What do you think is the one song they're eventually? Because they play the same song, like the same
song I've heard most in my life against my will is probably Hotel California.
But do they still play that? Because they kind of have moved away from 70s stuff even.
I mean, is he asking in the history of K-Earth?
I haven't asked. He asked, should we do a quick history of K-Earth?
K-Earth, yeah.
I have a what it will be and what it should be.
Okay, hit me with
I think what it will be, because they play it all the time right now, is Take On Me. I think eventually it will just play Take On Me 24/7.
Sure.
What it should be playing 24/7 is Funky Town.
Okay.
That's what I think it should be.
Listen, I'm not going to say you're wrong. Funky Town is an incredible song.
It's at least 2 songs in one, and it's long, and you're going to like it.
Yeah, okay. I just think about, like, historically, what are the 2 songs that...
Hotel California is on.
Hotel California.
That's Jack FM will be...
Yeah, there's a gun to my head, and it's the bullet is... There's 2 bullets. One of them's Hotel California.
Pulled the trigger, now he's dead. They can also play Bohemian Rhapsody all day.
Mrs. Robbins is the other one. Like, I love that song. I never need to hear it again.
But they never play, because they don't play 60s music anymore. I would kill to hear Mrs. Robbins. I'm with you. I don't even ever need to hear it again. I would kill to hear a Beatles song on the radio again.
I mean, I got to be honest. I don't listen to the radio that much anymore.
I listen to a lot of...
Shock jocks.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of...
I listen to audio recordings of South Park when I drive around. No, it's sad, the state of radio.
Yeah,
right now,
it is. I wish that
I wish K-Surf came back.
Oh, K-Surf, don't get me started. I wish that somebody just had created a playlist of just K-Surf songs that I know are just standard like hits of the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
But like with the intros from K-Surf and stuff. I want a radio show that I like, but like there isn't anything.
Oh, you don't like Frosty and Wiener Job or whatever?
Wiener Job. You don't like Chlamydia and the Wolverine?
You don't like Chubby and Barf Barf in the morning? Well, then what do you listen to on your commute?
How do you know what time it is?
How do you know who boned who on Love Island? We lamented the loss of K-Surf because it turned into a classical station. It is now a country station. So I'm hoping it's going to cycle back around to oldies sometime soon.
Maybe, yeah. I would like that. They should let us host a radio station.
I've always said that. I would have, if ever there was an industry we should put our money behind right now, it's terrestrial radio.
It's terrestrial radio. It's ham radio.
Should we start a paper newspaper also?
We should.
Should we buy LA Weekly?
Let's buy the Telegram technology.
Hey, whatever keeps your visa going. All right. So that's our first episode of 2025.
Hey, welcome.
Is that when Blade Runner, or was that 2020?
No, it's not 2025.
Wait, wasn't the other one Blade Runner, the sequel? What was that? Blade Runner 2025?
It's 2019.
Is it
because
really?
It's 30 years later. Yeah, it's 2019 is the original Blade Runner.
So it's Blade Runner 2049.
It's like 30 years later.
That's a weird name.
No, that's my address. Oh, I shouldn't have said that online.
Oh, no.
Get that out.
I live at 2049 Blade Runner Avenue. Blade RU. .ru. Go to that website.
Yeah,
Please go to
Blade
blade.ru.
Yeah.
So yeah, buckle up everybody. And we hope this episode brought you some sort of, hopefully it made you come to your senses about wanting to deport everybody. This is going
it made you want to do it even more.
So we'll see you soon for the Love Month. That's been yet another episode of LA Weekly.
Getting bought out by Starbucks since 2013. What are you going to order?
Do they have like some sort of like injera Ethiopian bread drink I can get? I just want the bread turned into a smoothie for me.
Yeah. I want chunks of it coming down a straw.
That way I can get more of it in my body.
And you're dipping it, and the ice cubes are also made from that too.
And so are the napkins and the plates. And wait a minute. I was injera all along.
Injera?
Hardly knew you.
Bye.